Gestionarea zilnică a crizelor este preocuparea politicienilor din toată lumea, doar că pare și principala cauză a faptului că rareori mai întâlnim strategii pe termen lung. Balanța de putere a lumii este fragilă, dar cei care rămân uniți pe baza principiilor comune au șanse mai mari să câștige. Un exemplu este reapropierea Regatului Unit de Uniunea Europeană pe tot mai multe planuri. Discutăm aceste aspecte cu Stephen Doughty, ministrul de stat al Marii Britanii pentru Europa și Statele Unite. Sunt Cristina Cileacu, începe Pașaport Diplomatic. Stephen Doughty, UK Minister of State for Europe and United States, welcome to Diplomatic Passport.
Thank you for having me.
Războiul din Ucraina este o realitate care redesenează arhitectura de securitate a întregii Europe. Uneori obosim să tot auzim că acest război este și despre noi, dar realitatea rămâne neschimbată. Sprijinul pentru Ucraina nu este un gest de caritate, ci o investiție în propria noastră siguranță. Ucraina a devenit un laborator militar al secolului 21, un loc în care tehnologia și tactica de front se întâlnesc într-un război prea lung deja. Este mai mult decât o confruntare între o armată agresoare și una care se apără. Este o schimbare profundă a modului în care se duc războaiele moderne și de aceea ne ajută pe noi restul să înțelegem diferența dintre libertate și ocupație. Dacă Ucraina cedează, nu pierd doar ei, pierdem noi toți, iar acest mesaj trebuie să treacă dincolo de vocile populiste din toată Europa. Este vital să continuăm sprijinul, indiferent cât de mult se prelungește conflictul.
Minister, we are living in a period where crises are overlapping. Looks like we don't have any stability. Looks like everything is changing every day. What is stable, though, is still the war in Ukraine, unfortunately, and we all have to keep the support for Ukrainians. You yourself declared in one a speech in the UK Parliament that the support for Ukraine must be resolute and ironclad. To what extent do you believe that this support of UK to Ukraine will remain if inside the country will be political turmoil?
We are absolutely clear in our support for Ukraine, and as indeed Europe is, and we just had a very successful meeting of the Coalition of the Willing in London, and I know that the President of Romania took part in that call too, and we've been very clear that whether it's in that support to Ukraine on a daily basis to respond to Russia's illegal war of aggression, or indeed choking off that Russian war machine, we are going to continue to stand with Ukraine, because it's not only vital for Ukraine's future, but also for European security and stability more broadly. And when you look at the appalling attacks just in recent days from drones and missiles hitting a kindergarten, the ongoing horror of the removal of Ukrainian children from Ukraine to Russia, one of the most heinous aspects of this war, we are going to stand with Ukraine and continue to do so. And the Prime Minister was very happy to confirm that with President Zelensky when he saw him again last week.
Comunicarea se învață. O democrație sănătoasă nu poate funcționa dacă cetățenii ei sunt lăsați pradă intoxicării cu informații false. Politicienii au obligația să explice simplu, repetat și onest de ce securitatea Ucrainei este legată de securitatea Europei și implicit de siguranța cetățenilor lor. Comunicarea transparentă este o formă de protecție națională. Discursuri manipulatoare care inversează rolurile, agresorul Rusia devine victimă, iar victima Ucraina este prezentată ca fiind vinovată pentru conflict, au un scop unic: alimentarea cinismului și a urii în rândul populației europene. În fața acestor minciuni, tăcerea sau ambiguitatea politică este fix o cedare de teren.
But then again, this support our countries are willing to give to Ukraine. In the same time, wears out the domestic politics everywhere in Europe, in UK as well as in Romania. Populism is increasing. And how can we explain to people this need for support? Because all of us are in this together. It's not only Ukraine, but somehow the population, again, on all our countries seems not to get this very clear idea.
Well, I'm pleased to say that certainly in the United Kingdom and indeed in many parts of Europe, there continues to be very, very strong support for Ukraine. And I see that in my own community. I see that in the British people who've helped Ukrainians who've fled the conflict. And of course, the fact that there is a strong cross-party support as well for Ukraine in UK politics. And I think that's because we recognise lessons from our own history of standing up to aggression and to horrific crimes and indeed threats to the security of the whole of Europe, and that we recognise that this isn't just about Ukraine, this is also about all of our security from here in the southeast of Europe to the northwest. We all face threats from Russia. We all face threats to our security, and that's why it's about supporting Ukraine, but it's also about investing in our own defence capabilities and ensuring that we can respond to threats, whether those are conventional or indeed the hybrid threats that we've seen targeting many of our countries. And these are the conversations I have with our European partners on a weekly basis. Indeed, I was just with leaders from the Western Balkans countries discussing security and stability in that region. And of course, it's crucial that we stand together across the Atlantic as NATO partners to the threats, wherever those come from. And of course, recognising there are other threats that we face, whether that's from serious and organised crime, whether it's from irregular migration, whether it's from terrorist organisations and others. And that's why the crucial cooperation between Romania and the UK is key to tackling those things for our citizens. I don't see any fatigue in support for Ukraine, and I am absolutely convinced that the British public know why this matters for us and indeed for the whole of Europe.
Marea Britanie nu are nevoie de manuale ca să înțeleagă natura agresivă a Federației Ruse. Istoria recentă i-a oferit dovezi directe, chiar pe propriul teritoriu. Cazurile Litvinenko și Skripal, atacuri cu agenți chimici și operațiuni clandestine desfășurate cu o violență care sfidează regulile diplomației și ale dreptului internațional. Aceste episoade le-au arătat britanicilor că Rusia nu ezită să folosească metode de război hibrid, asasinate, spionaj, dezinformare, ca să-și atingă obiectivele politice. În Marea Britanie, nu doar liderii politici, ci și opinia publică înțeleg miza conflictului din Ucraina. Pentru ei, agresivitatea Rusiei este o experiență trăită recent.
Every time I have an official from the UK in this program, I ask the same question because it's a constant curiosity. How come United Kingdom, which is on the other side of the continent, understands Russia so well? Because you do see the danger, but sometimes here in Romania, people are more concerned on the domestic issues, for instance, and less about the threat that Russia poses.
Well, I think, as I said, we have lessons from our own history, but it's also because we've seen what Russia does on the streets of the United Kingdom. We've seen them use chemical weapons, we've seen them use radiological weapons, we've seen acts of sabotage, we've seen attempts to sow division and disinformation, and we also see the threats in the North Atlantic, in the Arctic, and indeed, of course, crucially, to our partners and our friends at all corners of NATO. And we are absolutely committed to the NATO alliance, to our Article 5 commitments, and to standing up to that Russian aggression. And I am very, very clear-eyed about this. I think the British public are too. And that's, I think, why you see such strong support.
Anunțul Statelor Unite privind reducerea unei părți a prezenței militare din România nu ne bucură, însă nu schimbă fundamentul securității noastre. Suntem membri NATO, iar apărarea colectivă rămâne garantată de articolul 5. Într-o alianță, mobilitatea trupelor este un instrument strategic, nu un semn de retragere a angajamentului. România trebuie să-și folosească inteligent poziția geopolitică pentru a-și întări relațiile și cu restul de aliați.
Since you mentioned NATO, in the day we are recording this interview, an announcement came from the United States. US Army will withdraw some of its military presence here in Romania, so on the eastern flank of NATO. We already reacted, the Americans also reacted, but what's the take of United Kingdom that the eastern flank is weaker now with American withdrawing slowly, or we should be stronger? What's your take on that?
Well, ultimately, the deployment of American troops is for the United States. And of course, they have many, many important commitments to the NATO alliance and indeed to wider global security. And they remain our special partner. And we work closely with them every day for global security and for peace and for stability. And I'm very proud of that relationship. But of course, NATO is an alliance of many, many members. There is no diminishing of the United States commitment to NATO or to Article 5. There is no diminishing of the United Kingdom's commitment to those two things. And of course, we've had important role to play here, working with our Romanian partners, crucial training exercises that took place just last year involving 2,500 UK personnel, the work that we do on a daily basis and the work that we do in building up European defence industrial capability to respond to the threats of the present and the threats of the future. And both the UK and Romania have led from the front in our commitments on defence spending and of our commitments to the alliance. And NATO is an alliance of many, many, many parts, and of course there will be changes at different points in who is deployed where and when and how, but there is no change to the resolution of the alliance or the commitment of all of its members.
So the population of Romania should not be panicked on this?
I think the population of Romania should know that they have the support of NATO, of the United Kingdom, and that our adversary should be in absolute no doubt of our commitment to defending all members of NATO and to our Article 5 commitments, and we've shown that repeatedly, as have other NATO members.
Speaking of developing the army, there are some projects together between United Kingdom and Romania from this point of view. As you probably know, we have the SAFE project in European Union, and therefore we have to buy a lot and to develop a lot when it comes to defence industry. Are we working with UK in this sense?
Absolutely. I mean, look, these are live discussions at the moment. We made important commitments to them at the UK-EU summit back in May. But working together, NATO will always be the bedrock of our defence and security relationship, but cooperating and working closely with our friends in the European Union in new ways, and that's certainly been what our new government has done, is to reset that relationship with the European Union and to focus it on the things that matter to our citizens going forward, on growth, on security, on our common defence, on energy, on doing a better deal for our businesses and consumers and reducing some of those trade barriers. And actually, defence industrial cooperation sits at the heart of that, because it not only will help us prepare for the threats we face now and the threats we face in the future, but it can also generate high quality jobs, new technologies, some technologies that can be used in both military and civilian aspects. And when you look at the threat posed by drone technology or advances in artificial intelligence, or when you look at the need to respond to those hybrid threats, to cyber threats, I think there's a huge amount that the UK and Romania can be doing, that the UK and the EU can be doing, and I'm very pleased to say that those conversations are ongoing. And I've already been part of some of the new dialogues about how we respond to the hybrid threats in particular with our friends, with Kaja Kallas and her team, with individual countries like Romania. And it's important that we see that defence and security across multiple domains, not just the conventional domains that we might have been in the past.
Rusia folosește de ani buni dezinformarea ca armă strategică, creează confuzie, seamănă neîncredere în instituțiile democratice și încearcă să divizeze societăți întregi. Volumul uriaș de informații care circulă online, combinat cu viteza distribuției lor, face ca populațiile să fie expuse permanent la discursuri toxice, adesea prezentate ca știri alternative sau adevăruri ascunse. Problema este că în lipsa unei comunicări constante și clare din partea autorităților, acest vid informațional este umplut rapid de cei care manipulează realitatea. Când oamenii nu primesc explicații de la cei în care ar trebui să aibă încredere, sunt mult mai vulnerabili la minciuni bine ambalate și la emoții negative.
The war is always hybrid. It's not something new. I mean, it's first cognitive and then military, or the other way around. But anyway, they are together. In this sense, do we develop something with the help of United Kingdom in order to defend ourselves on the hybrid war? Because in Romania, we were under attack, especially the last year elections.
Well, absolutely. I mean, you have some direct experience here, but also we've seen, of course, what happened in Moldova and what's happened in attempts to destabilise and sow division in many European countries. And I think it's very important, therefore, that we're all sharing our experiences and that we're sharing our ways of responding to those. This is going to become all the more important as the ways that technology operate, the way that interacts with the media landscape, the way it interacts with the defence and security landscape changes. So we're very pleased with our cooperation that we have with Romania on these issues. But also, as I said, that's an important part of our conversation with the European Union as well.
Can you give me an example on how we fight together against the hybrid war when it comes to disinformation in particular?
Well, I think it's about making sure that we firstly understand what is being sown out there and what disinformation is out there and where it's coming from. And of course, it's not just from Russia. There are others also seeking to cause division in societies and to sow fake news and disinformation and misinformation around a whole range of topics. And we've tragically seen the impacts of that on a number of occasions in the UK recently. So it's understanding that landscape. It's about educating. It's about working with people to identify that, to respond, to rebut, to ensure that there is a vibrant and free democratic debate, but that is not in a debate around things that haven't happened or don't exist, which is often what our adversaries are trying to do. And then it's also about dealing with some of the technological aspects, working with, for example, when there's very specific cyber attacks or attempts to destabilise in those processes. So we're seeing a range of tactics being used by our opponents, and in order to keep European democracy stable, free, open, vibrant political debate, vibrant range of views expressed. That's the hallmark of a good democracy: free journalism, free civil society, but not when it's being skewed by outside forces and influence.
The methods that Russians are using are the same in UK and Romania, for instance, if we have to compare, or is only the narrative different?
I think we see many of the same methods used across Europe. The narratives are sometimes the same and sometimes they're different, because they often seek to prey on or exaggerate or twist things that may be happening or issues that may exist and concerns that people have, but to take them in a particular direction. Mm-hmm. We certainly saw that also after the poisonings and attacks in the UK, attempts to blame other people for those attacks when it was clearly Russia behind them. So you see it in a very direct way sometimes, but also sometimes it's to try and spread just a sense of impotence, of an inability to know the truth, and that's what we have to guard against.
Zona arctică este un centru de gravitație al geopoliticii mondiale. Pentru România pare un punct îndepărtat pe hartă, dar acolo se joacă deja competiția pentru resurse, rute comerciale și influență militară. Pe măsură ce calotele glaciare se retrag, noi culoare maritime devin accesibile, iar statele cu prezență în regiune își întăresc pozițiile. Rusia, în special, a investit masiv în militarizarea Arcticii, construind baze, consolidând flota despărgătoare de gheață și transformând zona într-un avanpost strategic. Problema este că atunci când o regiune atât de vulnerabilă devine scena unei confruntări, consecințele nu rămân locale. Neprotejarea Arcticii poate afecta securitatea energetică, stabilitatea economică și chiar mediul global, la fel cum agresiunea împotriva Ucrainei are impact asupra întregii Europe, nu doar asupra unei singure țări. România nu-și mai poate permite să gândească exclusiv regional, pentru că lumea se mișcă în viteză.
You mentioned at some point in our discussion the Arctic area. Why shall we be also careful about this area? Because Russia is also aggressive there, mm-hmm. although we are quite far from the Arctic zone and definitely we are not an Arctic state.
Well, it's a crucial area for many reasons. You know, certainly from a security and defence perspective, the North Atlantic is absolutely key, and whether that's in terms of trade routes or whether that's in terms of key communication links. And as the climate changes as well, and we see changes in the sea ice in the Arctic, we're seeing it used increasingly as a trade route by not only Russia but also by others. And I travelled up to Tromsø in Norway with my Norwegian counterpart at the time, and spent some time with the Norwegian Coast Guard looking at the challenges that are faced in the Arctic. Global powers playing an increasingly forthright role in the Arctic, and we need to make sure that we're keeping the Arctic safe, secure, understanding what's happening to the climate and the environment, and making sure we've got the capabilities again to understand what's going on there and to protect. And that's why the UK's recent deal with Norway over frigates is so crucial. As we work together in different maritime environments, we're facing some of the same threats and challenges, and that's why I think it matters. And you know, the Black Sea security as much as the Arctic, the Mediterranean, and of course in the Pacific too.
Can we apply our experience here in the Black Sea with the Russians to the Arctic area, also with the Russians, because their border is in both ways?
Yeah, look, I think there are important lessons that can be learnt in all maritime domains, and you know, we as two countries with proud maritime history, you know, can work closely together on those matters, and I think that's very, very important. And as I said, this comes as a set of different threats: conventional threats, maritime threats, cyber threats, hybrid threats. All the more important that we work together bilaterally and that we work together as strong NATO partners and allies.
Your visit in Romania was with what purpose?
It was to have our strategic dialogues, to meet with a number of ministers. I had excellent meetings with my foreign minister counterparts, discussing a range of topics, also with the Interior Ministry and the Justice Ministry. We're doing really important work together, tackling serious and organised crime gangs, tackling illicit finance, working together to tackle irregular migration routes, and also crucially looking to boost growth and trade between the UK and Romania, our people-to-people links, recognising over 1 million Romanians who live and work in the UK, and of course many UK citizens who come and travel and work here and enjoy Romania and all it has to offer, and also crucially to discuss that geopolitical situation. I think we've got a huge amount that brings us together. I think it's 145 years of diplomatic relations, huge affection between our countries and our people, and I think a very similar outlook, despite being at geographically different ends of the continent, much that unites us, and I think much that's going to underpin our relationship in the years ahead.
Minister, thank you so much for this interview.
Thank you very much.
Atât pentru astăzi, dar rămânem în continuare online pe pagina de Facebook a emisiunii și pe conturile noastre de X și Instagram. Revenim cu subiecte noi din lumea diplomației și a politicii externe, vinerea viitoare de la 11:30 și reluare sâmbătă după miezul nopții. La revedere!